You're listening to Puma Podcast.
Hi, I'm Nina Toralba.
And I'm Franco Luna, Puma Podcast. You're listening to Teka Teka News.
In this episode,
I think it's a matter of time when the Philippines will be able to finally get a player into the NBA. And can you imagine the hoopla and the craziness that will happen here in the Philippines?
Let's talk about our love affair with basketball. Where do we currently stand? At sa totoo lang, how much higher can we really go?
I've never been here. Never been here in my life, and so many people there to still follow my career and my life is truly a blessing.
If you're an NBA fan, you know that voice well. Basketball legend Dirk Nowitzki was in Manila at the end of April to help announce the draw for the 2023 FIBA World Cup.
I knew Philippines had a lot of basketball fans and a lot of basketball knowledge. I didn't think this was going to be this much.
Whether you get it or not, Pinoy hoopheads insist we will always be a basketball country. Filipinos were first introduced to the sport in 1898, just 7 years after Springfield College instructor James Naismith is said to have invented it in 1891. Basketball was supposedly brought over by colonizing American soldiers following the Spanish-American War.
The idea at the heart of my book is that the Philippines' passion for basketball runs deeper and burns hotter than it does in any other nation in the world. And I believe that's still the case today, just as it was 18 years ago when I first stepped off a Northwest Airlines jet at Manila's Ninoy Aquino International Airport and arrived in the Philippines for the first time on November 5th, 2005.
This is Rafe Bartholomew. He was a Fulbright scholar that first time he came to the Philippines. Rafe is the author of Pacific Rims, a nearly 400-page book that takes on Filipinos' more than 100 years of history and love affair with basketball. He's also the host of the new Puma podcast show, The Global Bounce. Rafe says basketball very quickly caught on with Filipinos, and soon it became the most popular sport in the country. But it wasn't always easy. It wasn't just height that stacked the odds against Team Philippines. We often also shot ourselves in the foot with politics.
In 2005, FIBA, the federation that oversees international basketball competitions, didn't even recognize a Philippine national team. That year, a few months before I first set foot on Philippine soil, there had been a power struggle between the Philippine Olympic Committee and the Basketball Association of the Philippines, where the Olympic Committee refused to recognize the Basketball Association's stewardship of the national team. The Olympic Committee had plans to partner with another basketball body to form a rival Philippine national team. One Olympic Committee, two Philippine national teams with dueling claims to legitimacy, FIBA took one look at this nasty little love triangle and said, "Nuh-uh." The international group suspended the Philippines from all of its events, and FIBA's Secretary General, the late Patrick Baumann, wrote a formal letter to the Philippine Olympic Committee, the message of which boiled down to, "Until you and all of the major basketball stakeholders in the country get on the same page, FIBA ain't touching you with a 5-meter pole."
Yet despite limitations and self-inflicted handicaps, the simple given is that there are now millions of basketball players in the Philippines, and the sport is played at all levels, from the streets to the professional leagues, from local barangay leagues to the Philippine Basketball Association. And hey, not only have our best players set their sights higher, actually playing in other professional leagues in other countries and continents, and actually dreaming and aspiring for the NBA, will be hosting, alongside Japan and Indonesia, the FIBA World Cup. And just like basketball exploding in these islands of mostly point guards, that in itself, our hosting of the World Cup, is some kind of story in itself.
The squabble took 2 years to sort out, with a timeline of events that sound like they could have been ripped from the pages of a spy thriller. The Tokyo Communique, the Hong Kong Summit, the Unity Congress. Then, finally, in 2007, FIBA lifted the ban and recognized the newly formed Samahang Basketball ng Pilipinas. In English, the Basketball Federation of the Philippines. That was the nation's new basketball oversight group, and it still is today, It's produced 16 years of relative stability that have led to FIBA's current embrace of the Philippines as the primary host nation of this year's World Cup.
It's arguably a more important stage and podium than that offered by the Olympics. The FIBA World Cup is an important yardstick to see how our shoulders line up to other countries' shoulders, or maybe their chests. It's no secret that Americans play in head and shoulders the best league in the world. Then it's probably the EuroLeague, and within that, the national leagues of Europe from Spain and France, Serbia, Lithuania, and Greece. Where do we stand? Next even to China, Japan, South Korea. Let's call a timeout and think about it. When we return, Nina Toralba will talk more about our place in the lineup.
Milos Jovanovic is a Serbian sports writer. He has never set foot in the Philippines. But in one episode of The Global Bounce, Milos shared with Rafe how he discovered and became a fan of the PBA.
And they're like, no, just, give it a shot. So I started watching the the PBA broadcasts, and you have to jog my memory about which television was it, because they were taking the verbatim feed from Philippine television, and I had Philippine announcers, which were speaking in a crazy bilingual mix of English and Tagalog. And it was basically like every seventh word was Filipino word, which I wasn't familiar with.
The PBA has been around since 1975, and fun fact, after the NBA, it's actually the second oldest professional basketball league in the world. Not that helped Milos to comprehend how this sport had exploded in the Philippines, given the little he knew of Filipinos, which included the little truth that we aren't quite as tall as Europeans.
Bit by bit, I started getting drawn into this strange world of Philippine basketball because, in every European country, there is something which you like to call levels. There's the national championship, right? There's the EuroLeague, which is like intra-European competition. There's like the European, and then there's the NBA on top of it all, right? It's like a finely structured hierarchy where you are supposed to know your place. You stay in your lane. Let's just put it that way. If you're really good, you go here, and then if you're really good at that level, you go there, and then you might end in the NBA, and in the Philippines, it was all about the Philippines.
Loving your own has its advantages, maybe.
And I found that great because here's a basketball product which looks and acts as it evolved completely independently from the worldly basketball trends in the past 50 years. And it's so insular, and there's so many people in it and following it. And they're so dedicated and they're so passionate, and it's like a fairy tale in a way. If you really dig deeper into it and you listen to the commentary, you don't just follow the game itself. It's a world into its own. And when they speak of legends, they don't speak of Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. They speak of Jaworski or Patrimonio and some other big players.
It was as if Pinoy hoops existed in its own world, and its fans could be content and even genuinely happy.
And it's like basketball outside the Philippines does not exist, which I found very funny. I'm sure that's a very outsider's perspective of things, but that's how it looked to me. Because all the kids which you watch playing all the young players who are playing in Europe are dreaming to go to NBA. And there's a kid in, Boracay Island who's dreaming to play for Ginebra. So, to me, it was very cool. And I started watching Philippine basketball not anymore as a sport, but as a kind of, a TV show in a way. To me, it felt like a new episode in a series which I was following through. I started getting into the anthropological angle, the sociological angle, all kind of cultural angles, and I started picking up on all those great PBA traditions. You know what I liked most? The spray painting of the numbers in the finals. Man, that was so great.
But while Philippine basketball passion is arguably second to none, the inescapable realization is that once you look beyond our bubble, there's a bigger, tougher world out there. And as more Filipinos venture out, we get a reality check about the level of play and even about our level of commitment to this sport. Our NBA and FIBA aspirations, at this point, it's not about winning, but it is about aspiring. And foundational to that, it is about standing next to other basketball loving communities and, yes, finding joy and purpose in that measure.
People are hoping that Kai Sotto finally makes it. He's 7'3", 7'4", but every Filipino knows that he lacks the body frame and the skills to be able to slug it out in the thick jungle of the NBA. He had some great moments in the Australian Basketball League. He's now in Japan. People are hopeful.
That's Sev Sarmenta, one of the OGs of sports commentating in the Philippines. He spoke with Rafe in the third episode of the Global Bounce. Whether Kai actually makes it to the NBA or any other league, he's already a legit name in Australian basketball. Sev and Rafe talked about how the 7-footer from Ateneo is the current stand-in for every outsized dream and aspiration Filipinos have for themselves and for Philippine basketball in general. Kai triggers important conversations on that score, not just for himself, but for every Filipino who, right now, dreams bigger than his or her height.
But will a Johnny Abarientos, a small Filipino, finally make it? We'll see. I don't know yet. In the current crop of players, there might be one or two, who they are escapes me right now, that could make it to the NBA. But the talent quota in the NBA is so difficult to penetrate. So many imports who are over here, who are excellent players, couldn't even make the regular cut. We'll see. If Kai Sotto makes it, maybe that'll open the door to other Filipinos.
What can a homegrown Filipino's journey to the NBA or the highest levels of the world stage look like? Milosh says maybe we can get an assist from his hometown, Serbia.
When you're growing up as a kid in Serbia, you're basically, they'll let you try everything. And you stick with the best thing around. But all of us, as part of our primary school curriculum and high school curriculum, we will play football, primary. Then when you grow a bit taller, you start playing basketball.
There's actually a lot we have in common with the country of the reigning NBA Finals MVP, Nikola Jokic. Serbia has long been a rabid basketball country too. And yes, they're also bigger, but Milosh says the development and program for basketball, or for any sport, in Serbia is founded on some real philosophy to start.
There's two things. First of all, Serbian athletes, I don't know a single one who plays only one sport.
Second, Milosh says, among kids who do eventually focus on basketball, the culture they build is different from the brand of hero ball Filipinos fell in love with and emulated watching the NBA.
They will tell you you'll play center at some point in time. But the coaches will make sure you know the fundamentals first and foremost.
Rafe, Milosh, Sev Sarmenta, and so many other basketball minds take on so many other insights in the Global Bounce. Insights about a global love for the game, but also about what it takes for programs and investments to rise to the level of passion and aspirations we already have. The FIBA coming to our court, and Filipinos playing alongside great basketball nations, that represents something in our journey. Sev and Milosh say, if not for anything else, it will keep us dreaming. But more importantly, it will make us ask, not just what ifs, but also what now?
Does a player like Mikey Williams make it to the NBA with that excellent shooting touch from the outside? Do you think that a player like Jason Castro, if he was younger, would he have had a chance? As of now, I'm sure the NBA is not looking at Asia, although they've looked at Japan and they've gotten one or two players already. They've gone to Africa, of course. They've gotten a few players. The Europe League is, of course, there.
So we don't know if there's a growth spurt waiting for you, and somewhere down the road. And we don't know if you're going to stick being 5'9", but we're going to make sure that you learn all the good things which you need to learn.
And that was today's episode of Teka Teka News. If you like this episode, you might like The Global Bounce, hosted by Rafe Bartholomew, where you'll hear sports journalists, coaches, and ballers from around the world talking about their love of the game. Again, I'm Nina Toralba.
And I'm Franco Luna. This episode was written by Nina and myself and edited by Freddy Blanco. Our Teka Teka News executive producer is Jill Caro, and our senior editor is Veronica Uy. The video of Dirk Nowitzki at the top of the episode comes from the official Instagram page of the FIBA World Cup at FIBAWC. Please do share this episode with a friend or two, and of course, don't forget to follow Teka Teka News and Puma Podcast on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube.